Peace, Bargani, Islam, Salam, Hetepu, Rahubat, Gino Longo Ninani, Chief Noble Bandele El-Amin, back again with another video. Today's video, we're going to be discussing the holiday Christmas, and we're going to have discussion on should Christians celebrate Christmas, and should us pagans and Moors take back our religion. We're going to discuss that. So before we get into that today, check out my information, Bandele El-Amin, phone number, Cash App, if you like to donate, if you like these videos, any of the other videos, or this video, please donate. You can also contact me on my email, and I would also like you to check out indigenous.services.webs.com, the one-stop shop for your legal needs. Okay. Also, please also check out my books or on Amazon.com. I have an array of books dealing with spirituality, dealing with history, Moors, indigenous history, and all the likes. Okay, I have a variety of books. You're dealing with, if you got the first Moorish Treaty, please check out the second Moorish Treaty book. Okay, so please check out my information. Check out the books I have. Be a good book for the holidays like Kwanzaa and whatnot. So with that being said, let's get into the videos. Now, this thing about Christmas, as a person who's spiritual, as a Moorish American, as a more indigenous person, I tend to have stayed away from the Christmas traditions because I have associated them with being Christian, and I do not associate as a Christian. So a lot of times I stay away from that information, or stay away from those type of things. However, upon further thought and research, I begin to realize that Christmas is so pagan, which I already knew, but it's so pagan that I don't understand why Christians celebrate it. It has nothing to do with them at all, So what I want to do is show here the pagan origins of Christmas and why the Christians celebrate these things if they're pagan. Okay, so when we look at it, the first thing we want to think about when we think about Christmas is the winter solstice. Now, for those who are in the knowledge, they know. But the winter solstice is the real concept of Christmas, is of the sun rising out the solstice. So they talk about Christmas is really Easter. Now, the reason why they say that is because December 25th, it ends the solstice. The sun rises out of its tomb. So what they're saying basically is that between the 21st and the 24th, the sun does not move at all. It doesn't get any more daylight or any less daylight. It's pretty much symbolized as dead. And then on the 25th, it moves 1 degree, okay, back. And then from that day forward, you begin to notice that there's more daylight. So what people of ancient times, they looked and said, oh, the sun is born again. And so that's symbolic of Jesus being born on that day, because it's really talking about the sun. So not to go further into this, but I'm going to let this, we're going to read it a little bit more. So it says that the tomb, it rises out of its tomb to begin its ascension to sit on the right side. Now it says in the northern sky on the 21st, June 21st, we experience the longest day, which is the summer solstice. So you got to understand, 6 months prior to this winter, we got summer. And we go through every 3 months, we go through a season. So the longest day is in the summer, the shortest day is in the winter. The Jesus Easter story is actually the resurrection of the sun. Okay, now I understand this because the story of Jesus rising out the tomb at Easter is actually the sun rising out the solstice and Christmas. So, when they talk about on Easter that Jesus was buried or dead for 3 days and then he rose from the dead. Well, at Christmas, we just said that from the 21st to the 24th, you have the sun dead for 3 days, and then it rises. So that's the symbolism of that. Okay, the church revered the order. The Catholic Church was the church that became the monopoly over Christianity, and it was the Roman. It was under the Roman dominion at the time. So when you talk about the church reverse the order, we're talking about, if you look at the early church, the tradition is reversed by the early church, but the entire meaning is the sun energy rising up and to the right, which in turn brings us new life in spring and summer. The actual apparent movement of the sun is truly the movement of the Christ. It says, from birth through crucifixion to the tomb of the solstice to the rebirth of December 25th. To encounter the waterman, the fisherman, the lamb, sitting at the right hand, and finally ending at the sign of the lion. So I'm like, one thing you gotta understand, that a lot of this has to do with astrology. When we look at the stars, they begin to notice stars, they begin to group them into constellations, and then they begin to tell stories to remember what they have saw. And so when you're talking about encountering the waterman, who's that? Aquarius. Talking about the fisherman, that's Pisces. Talk about the lamb, that's Aries, sitting at the right hand, finally ending with the sign of the lion, which is Leo. So they're really talking about the astrology, and there's a lot more to that if you look at the Bible, but that we'll do that for another day. So we talk about the Leo, the riddle of the Sphinx from Virgo in September to Leo in August. So, I mean, they're always talking about astrology. Okay. So to go further, the Cancer. Let's go a little bit further down. Okay. So let's talk about the sun also rises. As of December 25th, each day after will become a little longer. Like we said, there will be a little bit more sun. It says that finally the sun's energy will touch the top. The anointing will take place that they call Passover. And it passes over into spring. So when you hear the Hebrews talk about Passover, they're talking, once again, astrology. It passes over to spring and then to summer. Okay. New life comes from the Christmas resurrection. All that has been dead through the cold, dark winter will burst forth into new life. So it is that the essence of Christmas which we have missed. That's why people get so excited about Christmas, because they realize that it's the beginning of the sun coming back, the sun being born again. We've gone through so many months or weeks of pretty much mostly darkness. You get a little bit of sunlight. Like now, we're in this time of year, is December, and you notice that there's less sunlight than it's been throughout the year. And that causes depression. Lack of sunlight causes lack of vitamin D, which has been linked to depression. So, people are sad. Darkness causes people to be, down and out, slow. And the sun, revitalizes the body, the brain, the pineal gland, all these things. So it's important. Okay. So I just wanted to show that. So the fact that the solstice and Christmas are interchangeable, that Christmas is really the end point of the solstice. And we're talking about the sun. Now, am I making this up? Did the pagans do this? Yeah, the pagans, they looked at the sun and worshiped the sun in the sky. Okay. And you can see this by, if we look at Roman traditions, okay? Early Roman traditions. Let's look at this real fast. When you look at the soul Invictus. Sol Invictus, meaning unconquered sun. Now check this. It was the official sun god of the later Roman Empire and a patron of soldiers. Listen, on December 25th, AD 274. Okay, so 274 AD, that's like 230 something years after, the story of Jesus and him leaving the scene. So we're talking about 230 something years after that. And so that means that Christianity was around at this time. Christians then did not practice holidays on December 25th. That was not a holiday. Christians did not worship the sun. Okay? So, but we see who did on December 25th. The Roman Emperor Aurelian made it official religion alongside traditional Roman cults. Scholars disagree whether the new deity was a refoundation of the ancient Latin cult of Sol, or the revival of another cult, or a completely new thing. The gods was favored by the emperors after Aurelian and appeared on their coins until the last third part of reign of Constantine. Now, Constantine is the emperor who actually favored Christianity and made Christianity ultimately coming to be the state religion. The Council of Nicaea falls under Constantine's rule. So if you don't know what the Council of Nicaea is, we'll have to get to that in another video. But for those who know, you understand. So roughly 50 years or so before the council in 325, they had right here in 274 had made the sun god officially on the day of December 25th, which makes sense because that's the day of the sun. That's the first day the sun comes back. Makes sense. Okay. So you see that pagans already had adopted that day, and it goes back to other cults that had used that same day. And it wasn't Christian. Christians didn't practice that. Okay? Christians didn't practice that Jesus was born on December 25th. That is something that comes later. So we have to understand that. So let's move on. So check this. Let's talk about this Christmas tree, because the Christmas tree is the major symbol of Christmas. And many of you already know that the tree had been used prior to Christianity. Okay? So let's look at this. Let me see, man. We got this computer, man. Want to take his little time, trying to bring it up. Now you see the Christmas tree. Now, like I said, origins of the evergreen tradition. This is Newsweek. Are Christmas trees pagan? Inside the origins of the evergreen tradition. Now, they like to say, the Catholics or whatever, Christians like to say this is the embodiment, the body of Christ, this thing of this nature. And the Christmas tree has nothing to do with Christianity. Okay? So let's look at this. I tell you, boy, this my computer sometimes want to be glitchy at the wrong times. That's okay, because we still go through this, right? So it says here that Christmas trees are widely associated with the Christian holiday, but their origins are far from the Christ worshiping standards. that represent today. Have been celebrated in cultures for hundreds of years, but were not really part of that tradition. Okay, they were. Listen, it says they were not always accepting of that tradition. So the early Americans didn't deal with that. It says that Christmas trees did begin as a pagan tradition as early as the 4th century. Now, we're going to get into, we're way further back than 4th century, but according to these news, European pagans were largely responsible for dressing their homes with the branches of evergreen fir trees and ordering color light to their dull winters. Pagans weren't the only people to do this. Romans also used branches for decoration during the Festival of Saturnalia, which took place between December 17th and 23rd in honor of Saturn. And we're not going to really get into Saturn right now because times Saturnalia and Saturn are traditions that Christian brews also have some type of origin of in itself as well. But we're not, for the sake of the video, we're not going to go into all that. But it says because of their pagan roots, American settlers were not quick to jump on the Christmas tree trend. Settlers were the first to introduce the indoor evergreen to the new country, but it didn't go over smoothly, according to the History Channel. So it was Germans that brought that to America. It wasn't something that has always been. It was something that was brought to America, and the Americans adopted it after some time. So it's not even. It's close to 200 years old. Close to 200 years old. Okay. Now, let's see. When we look at, let's go further into this. Okay, I think I went a little bit too far. So now this is important right here, because this right here represents how Christians really should be thinking. And this is what makes me wonder. It talks about the newly settled Puritans were big supporters of Christmas and widely opposed the pagan influence. So they understood that there was a pagan influence. Oliver Cromwell tried to destroy the new, you hear that? New Christmas traditions of decorating, dismissing them as heathen pagan mockery. 1659, the General Court of Massachusetts even made a law that celebrating Christmas was illegal. The only thing allowed was church attendance. No decorations, trees should be seen. So, that's letting you know right there. Christians that understood the pagan tie. And so, Christians tried to break away from those pagan ties. But see, the people were so caught up in the pagan traditions that they couldn't separate the two, because they really like to celebrate Saturnalia and the solstice and old Yuletide. They like that. So as a Christian, they just took those traditions and put them with being Christian. Okay. They stole. So basically what they did, Christians stole traditions and made them their own. Okay. So, moving right along. Moving right along. We want to look at the meanings of Christmas symbolism. Christmas was explained. It says nativities dot the landscape, these type of things must be Christians. In the Christian world, Christmas is a time to celebrate the birth of Christ. Yet, from Plato, largest to be relevant, seem a far cry from the simplicity of Jesus Christ's birth. It says celebrating Christmas has been controversial since its inception. Numerous festivities found their roots in pagan practices, be frowned upon by the conservatives within the Christian world. But despite its Christian context today, much of what defines modern Christian holiday found their roots in pagan society. Here is a look at some of the Christian traditions originated. Okay. Now, what we want to do, I want to look at this right here. You got the midwinter festivals of ancient Babylon and Egypt, Germanic fertility festivals, the birth of the ancient sun god, okay, celebrated on the 25th, was the birth of the Persian sun god, Mithra, okay? Okay, like the mistletoe. You know, we talk about Santa Claus, or Sinister Claus, or Saint Nicholas. But there's something on here that tickles because the tree. Talk about this tree some more. The tree, y'all. The tree. The concept of this tree originated around 3000 BC. Ancient King Oser, and we know as Aset. The death of King Oser, his wife Aset propagated the doctrine of survival of Oser as a spirit. She claimed a full-grown evergreen tree sprang overnight from a dead stump, symbolizing the new life of Oser's spirit from his death. On each anniversary of Oser's birth, which was the date we know as what? December 25th. So Oser, that's 3,000 years, or excuse me, 3,000 years ago, was propagated to be born on the 25th. Now look, Isis or Aset would leave around this tree. Okay? Now, it didn't go into this, but every year people would come all over and leave gifts under the tree. An evergreen or an acacia tree. Okay? So, gift giving, not a Christian, is I don't know what. It goes back to our African roots. Okay? Has nothing to do with Christians. It's our stuff. We put notes for Oser. But see, the problem is, if we did, then they'd be thinking we Christian. But the truth is, it's ours. Okay? So, to keep there's one more thing to look at. One more thing to look at. I want to check out Because when we talk about the evergreen tree, we talk, is on here. I'm not sure it popped up or not. Let's see. Actually, it's this right here. Let's look at this right here. Okay, so when we talk about the symbolism behind that, the symbolism go back, it's not Christian. When we talk about pine tree, we're talking about pine cones. We're talking about, when we talk about pine cones, we're talking about the pineal gland. Like what they say right here, pine is a common name for an evergreen tree, okay? Plenty of different species of that. So I talked about, let's look at the symbolism. It says pines in general are mostly plants that colonize new environments. The pine tree, this is evergreen. It's a symbol of immortality. So that reminds you of what we talked about was there, being reborn, and every year they come back. They don't. That's resurrection, immortality, eternity. In addition to its meaning common to conifers, this tree also symbolizes marital happiness and fertility due to needles joined and grafted into trees. Okay, so let's look at spiritual meaning, because there's a meaning to go. The pines in Greece were consecrated by Rhea, which represents the totality and contain parts of opposites within, configuring itself andro. What's this? Andronym, from which the creation sprang. Evergreen tree is a symbol of immortality, so much so that its resin was used to purify, sterilize, and embalm things that wanted to be preserved over time. It was used as censers to purify the sacred space of a temple or to invoke the eternal. The two with rich and resin used as prayer for Christmas. Okay, so when you look at that, the tree has always been symbolized as spiritual. Even when we talk about the pineal gland, now this ain't here, but when we talk about the pineal, if you look at the pineal gland, it looks like pine cone. And so when you look at the pine cone tree, it also plays the third eye, a pineal gland. Okay, so the notion that Christians somehow have this is their holiday, this is not Christians' holiday. This is our holiday. This is our holiday as Moors, as indigenous people, as spiritual pagans. It is our day. You know, observe the solstice is a pagan tradition that we observe, that we find the sun in the sky for 3 days, while the sun fasts for 3 days, and then we emerge. And for our melanated brothers and sisters that celebrate these things, why not celebrate Kwanzaa? Why not celebrate a day that shows a cultural significance to our way versus adopting some pseudo Christian holiday that has nothing to do with Jesus or anything? Like, what does Santa Claus or Saint Claus have to do with Christmas? What is Saint Nick? You know, a lot of times people don't understand Nick. Saint Nick was a real man that actually was at the Nicaea Council. So check that out. So There's a lot to this though, but this is an of I think out of your and occasions will drop heat all the time. And until then, have a wonderful day and a wonderful holiday.